So I wanted to have at the beginning an update for you from our chair, Adab Tarifi, and then we're going to have a conversation and we'll be able to take your questions from that. So with that, could Adab please come and give us an update? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you for being here. I will not take too much of your time, but I hope you are all receiving the communication from the Islamic Center. If anybody has not yet, please make sure you register with the front desk to ensure that you are getting the communication and you are being updated as we continuously do to inform the community. I will, inshallah, invite Mr. Omar Richi to give you a little bit of the background and the timeline of what has happened. But my main role here is I want you to know that we are, as the leadership of the Islamic Center, doing everything possible to ensure everybody's safety. Starting from the staff to the school, the children, you coming here, whether on Friday, Sunday, or at attending any of our programs taking place throughout the week, even the prayers. You've probably noticed there has been beefed up security, which has been the practice, by the way, even before this threat came. Since the San Bernardino situation, we have been increasing security at almost every event. It's not in any way to show that we are scared. It is a measure that we are taking, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, "Aqil wa tawakkal." You know, we do our best to be prepared, and then we, of course, trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in everybody's, to take care of all of us and keep us safe. The Islamic Center is taking every precaution. We are, as of this morning, as a matter of fact, we had a meeting with the leadership and we have a security task force to look into making our center and our schools safe and not dependent on circumstances, but have a permanent plan in place so that it's implemented throughout the year, inshallah. I want to make sure that you have direct access to the leadership if you have any questions, and I'm hoping this forum will allow you to ask questions and for us to address. I don't want anybody leaving here with having, God forbid, any anxiety or any concern. Inshallah, everything will be fine. One more thing that I would like to ask and each and every one of you, safety and security is not just a responsibility of one or two people or the security outside. I think it is important for all of us to be, to continue our life in normalcy, but at the same time, it is our responsibility to be each other's protectors. We need to stay vigilant. We need to stay aware. If you see anybody or anything that doesn't look normal, you really need to reach out. You know, whether it's the board, it's the leadership, it's the staff. Just don't let things just go by. Whether you see them outside or inside, it is important that we are staying vigilant. As a matter of fact, on one Friday, it was Friday prayer, and one of my dear friends who comes constantly to the center, she left her purse and went inside to pray. I took her purse because I didn't want anybody to think what that person is doing there. It is important that these little things, important for us to handle them properly and collectively. For now, I'd like to invite Omar Richi. Omar Richi is the spokesperson of the Islamic Center, and he's the ex-chair of the Islamic Center, and both him and I have been really working around the clock, staying on top of the situation, whether with the LAPD, whether with the city, and the Homeland Security, And you notice on Friday, we had the attorney of the city here to address and assure the community that our safety is taken seriously by everybody in the city. Omar, inshallah, will update you. And one last thing I'd like to ask each and every one of you, part of our safety is the kind of information we know and the kind of information we share. If anybody tries to reach out to you, whether it's the media, whether it's outsiders, be careful not to share with them the information that you know, because this is part of our security. If anybody is seeking information, always channel them through, take it to the staff, and the staff will channel it through Omar and I. Nobody really is allowed to speak about the situation and the case, whether it's with the media or anybody, except Omar and I, because we want to make sure that we don't divulge information that could impact the case. And for that, I really appreciate your support. I appreciate your cooperation, and I appreciate your being here saying that fear will not stop us from coming to our house of worship. It is something that I really commend you for, and thank you, and may God bless you, and may God protect us and protect each and every one of us. Thank you so much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm also a police officer, in addition to being the spokes. I'm also the, so.
Did I forget to mention that?
My name is Omar Ricci. I sort of play a dual role here in the situation. I've been coming to this Islamic Center for over 40 years. I'm also now the spokesperson of this Islamic Center, but as you can tell, I'm also a police officer with the Los Angeles Police Department. What I'd like to do is start off with a timeline of what has actually happened, so you can understand the nature of what we've had to deal with over the past week or so, maybe longer. On Wednesday, October 19th, around 8 o'clock in the morning, both Hadab and myself were called by the Deputy Chief of the LAPD Counterterrorism Bureau, advising us that an arrest had been made of an individual who had called the Islamic Center and made deadly threats, criminal threats. Those calls were made back in September. September 19th, the gentleman, and you may have already heard some of this on the news, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, September 19th, this gentleman named Mark Fagan called the Islamic Center and left a very nasty voicemail. Some of you may have heard it in the news reports. On September 20th, he called back, and one of our front desk people answered the phone, and in addition to sort of saying the nasty things, he said something that transformed, that sort of moved it from being a First Amendment issue where you have the right to say what you want to say in this country into now a criminal matter, which is that he threatened the life of our front desk person. So that there, and it was, second of all, it was a threatening of his life based on his belief system, based on how he worshipped. And so from that point, it moved from being a First Amendment issue now into a criminal matter. Major Crimes Division of LAPD was contacted, and detectives were sent out. Detectives assessed that a crime had been committed, and immediately an investigation was started. You'll note that the crime happened on September 20th, and the arrest was made on October 19th. There's a 1-month gap there. And that is because the LAPD, it didn't take that long for us to find him. We found him much sooner than that, but we were in the process working to understand the nature of who this person was. And I won't disclose exactly when we found him. But it was on October 19th that we made the arrest. We made the arrest around 7:30 in the morning. We conducted a search warrant of his home, and in conducting the search warrant, we found 13 weapons, which range from being pistols to shotguns to AR-15 rifles. And we found over 1,000 rounds of ammunition. So this was a pretty bad character, and it's something that obviously we're glad that we made that arrest. So now I transition to my role as the spokesperson here at the Islamic Center. I was given this call. I was not privy to that information prior to getting the call. So on on Wednesday morning, Chief Downing gave us a call, advised us of the arrest along with the weapons and the ammunition. It's at that point that Hidab and I started being in communication. Both us here at the Islamic Center and at the LAPD, we sort of take and more so the LAPD, we take a little bit of a reactive measure. What I mean by that is that the gentleman was arrested at 7:30 in the morning. 9 hours later, he posted bail. And his bail was set by based on the crime that he committed. He committed a crime of criminal threats. It used to be called terrorist threats, but I think it was renamed to criminal threats in the legislation process. That bail set by law is $50,000. Doesn't matter if you're calling us or calling anybody else. All right, it's a $50,000 bail set by the system. Because there was an additional hate crime that was committed by threatening our staff member with his life, an additional $25,000 bail was tacked on to that $50,000. And then there was one other charge, I can't remember off right now, that Summer Atude is here, she can give you some much more precise definition of things, but he was also had an additional $2,500, so $77,500 was his total bail. To get out of jail, you only have to pay 10% of that to get out of jail. So his mother came and paid up the $7,750 or whatever it is, the 10% of the bail. He was then released. That again was on Wednesday evening or so. Thursday, and at that point, one would think that a gentleman who has been arrested and had his guns confiscated is now facing a criminal threats and hate crime charge, that he would get the message. But what transpired was something that happened over the weekend. So now, Thursday, Friday, Hidab and I were talking, we're figuring how do we communicate this to the community. We've already decided to beef up security at that point, talking with Kanan and the administration. So that process is already underway. Saturday and Sunday come around. LAPD is taking measures to keep note of this gentleman. And we get a call, again, Monday morning from Chief Downing saying the suspect has done something that, and to be honest with you, I can't share with you what it was, that caused us that caused the concern level to exponentially rise. It caused the concern level to go up, both here at the center and by the LAPD. LAPD tacked on significant more resources on dealing with this person. And again, I can't reveal tactics or information that would compromise, but there's significant more resources that were added on to deal with this individual. We here at the Islamic Center of Southern California said, wow, this is an escalation. One of the approaches we feel are best is to now get this information out into the public, to the community very quickly. In other words, if this person feels that he's a license and he's not going to pay a price for what he did, through the legal system, well, we sure are going to let people know in the world what's exactly happened. And that's where the Islamic Center, in conjunction with the LAPD, conducted 2 press conferences on Tuesday afternoon. One at LAPD headquarters, where the criminal charges were mentioned and the criminal acts were brought up, and then one here at the Islamic Center of Southern California, where we played the tape of what he said. And the great thing about the press conference here at the Islamic Center is that our interfaith, our civic, and otherwise partners came and stood shoulder to shoulder with us here at the Islamic Center. This Islamic Center takes pride in partnering with our fellow Americans. We are here as an institution, of course, first and primarily to serve you, our Muslim community, and the values and the ideology that we have, but a key part of that is our partnerships with others. And those partnerships with others pay dividends in times like this. The press conferences were conducted And it also sped up, and I want to just emphasize something that was maybe mentioned. You know, this Islamic Center, where we are located, unfortunately, sometimes we get some homeless people that come in. It's not just homeless, but people who are not mentally well. And they unfortunately sometimes come in and create, unfortunately, great disturbances. And so we've had to deal with that from time to time, and in that regard, we already have security here. But given the nature of what happened this past weekend, we did significantly more. And prior to this event, starting, I would say, from the tenure starting of Sister Hidab, that security has taken a much higher degree of focus here at the center. Now, the pace at which it has moved has not been as great as we would like, and really that's primarily because there's a limited amount of resources here at the center. The center does not have an infinite amount of money. I mean, the budget is $1 million, and $1 million sounds like a lot, but it's not. We have people to pay, we've got the lights to pay for, we've got the school to take care of, we've got teachers to pay, we have so many other things. So security is being planned for, but now, as Hidab mentioned, we have, and in light of what's really happened, it's really put a fire under us to have a proper task force that's going to be established, that's going to have some very clear-cut processes. And I would say that there's a planning process that's happening right now that is probably going to take about several months to get the planning process going. That doesn't mean we're not going to do anything in those months. We're going to have plenty of extra security and plenty of things that you see and plenty of things that you do not see. And this Islamic Center has been working with the LAPD to do a threat assessment, a vulnerability assessment at the Islamic Center. We have, of course, our children, our New Horizons School, and our Sunday School. Paramount. We cannot have our angels being affected. And so, in that regard, we took immediate steps Monday morning. But again, we have a plan of action that is being crafted. We have some people just today that we saw from the Department of Defense, really, Muslim community members who work with the Department of Defense who are going to be involved in this as well. So we're working quite vigorously on implementing that. Sort of a couple last things. Number one, all these plans and what we're talking about, there is never going to be a foolproof security measure for this Islamic Center or any Islamic center or any church or any synagogue or any institution. If there are people who wish to do us harm, then unfortunately that is the case. We have a responsibility as the leadership of this institution to try and do everything we can to prevent that, but there's never going to be a foolproof case. There's always going to be a nut case. There's always going to be somebody inspired by what's going on in the political world. There's always going to be somebody who just is deep in their hate, like this person, Mr. Fagan. And we're going to have to deal with that. What we're doing is making sure that this Islamic Center is as well protected as possible. And as I said something this morning, but I don't want the character of this Islamic Center to change. We are a place that is inclusive, welcoming, that we are a place of spirituality where we try and come to God and turn to love. And so in that regard, we're going to take steps to protect you and your family. I'm an LAPD officer. You know where I stand in terms of security. You know what I want to do. But I want to make sure that our institution is protected as well. The last thing I will say is the following. We are starting to hear voices in the community that said, and this event has highlighted certain negative aspects of the Islamic Center leadership. That we may be inept, that we didn't act in a timely way, and we are not doing what's right by the community. Allah, God knows best. This event has highlighted some deficiencies that we need to improve upon, and we will absolutely improve upon. But I would also say that we accept criticism. We accept suggestions. We accept people being critical of the leadership. That needs to be part of the healthy part of this Islamic Center. But if it is done in a way to tear down and destroy, If it is done in a way where you want to sit outside and just throw stones without being involved in the process, that is not what this Islamic Center needs, especially in this immediate aftermath of this crisis. You know, there's a verse in the Quran that talks about, and I brought it up here, that talks about, it's in Surah Al-Asaf, Surah number 61, verse 4. It says, "Verily, God loves only those who fight in His cause in solid rank, as though they were a building firm and compact." That is what we need right now. We need to be in solid rank. We need to be firm and compact. And for somebody who is really here in the community, and there's other people maybe that are seeking to break that rank, you know, it's a free country. You're welcome to worship anywhere else. You don't need to be at this mosque. We're trying to do what's best for the community, and we're welcome to criticism. Like I said, we're welcome and open to criticism. We're welcome to do things better. But again, if it's in the vein of tearing down, you know, that's not what this mosque is about. And we'll be answering some questions later on. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Omar. I also want to stress another point, that we do everything that's humanly possible to protect our center, to protect our community, and to defend Islam. But at the end of the day, really, it's Allah that protects us. To me, there's a divine message in all of this, and the fact that this man sent a threatening message to our center and exposed himself and got law enforcement to start paying attention to him, and then got arrested because of so many other things, and he had all these guns and explosives. It's a message that God is protecting our center, and that God also is letting us know that there's a problem of violence in the overall society. In reality, we're only seeing a tip of the iceberg in terms of this kind of violence that's happening in our society. So I think we should all remember that God is protecting us. And God, inshallah, will protect this Islamic Center. And as long as we are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and work for the right cause, then we will survive. We will prevail over any and all challenges. And this country, by the way, and we're going to talk about this, you know, when we get into the elections, is definitely going through a very challenging phase in terms of what we mean by pluralism in our society, racialization of so many issues, the divisiveness along racial and religious lines in our country. That is another test that this country is going through. So let's remind ourselves the big picture in terms of serving Islam in America for the future. I think as long as we stay on that course, we will find more resources and we'll get more support. And now this center is probably the most protected house of worship in the area. We have LAPD on patrol, we have the FBI looking out for us. They've always been looking. But looking at us in a different way this time. And we have people really, believe you me, we have people watching out for us. And like Omar said, to see the deputy mayor and the sheriff's department and LAPD and then 10 or 20 interfaith groups, and people are still asking us, what can we do for you to show you our support? We want to be in solidarity with Muslims. That's an amazing step to deal with these challenges. So let's keep in mind the progress that we're making with the situation at hand. I wanted to ask, actually, Kristen, could you tell us a little bit, we only have about 5 or 10 minutes left, about the media coverage on this issue and where we're going in terms of media?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Kristen. I'm the communications coordinator here at the center. And I just wanted to update you all on the current state of our story here in the news. We've been highlighted in local press. We've been even in national coverage with the Washington Post. Local stations such as KTLA, ABC7, LA Times, and other news outlets have been covering this story for us, which is hugely important so that our story can get out into the world and greater communities can hear about what's happening here at the center. At the same time, this is an area that we should tread cautiously in as the case is ongoing to make sure that we're staying as safe here at the center as possible. So one thing I would urge you all to do is share the message with your loved ones, your friends and families, that if you're approached by news reporters, it's okay to say no. And right now, it's important that we look to our own internal community and understand what our words can do in the media. So if you're approached by a camera, say no. It's okay. Let our representatives here at the center handle those messages to the outside world. In addition to that, social media is a huge platform for us as well. Knowing what we're saying on social media is very critical during this time, and the stories that we do share. Right now we have a huge outpouring from our interfaith community. Let's take advantage in highlighting those issues. Let's share those posts. Show the love and support that we're getting from the community who many people think Muslims don't have a relationship with. Use that as an opportunity. In addition, we have a campaign here at the center that the Communications Committee and other leadership are currently involved in. It's called the Stay Safe, Stay Informed campaign. One thing we would really request of you is if you can take just a few minutes to fill out this form. It asks you basic information, your name, your address, your email, your phone number. Generally speaking, most people don't want to share this information, but please know that it's safe if you share it with us. We want to keep it on hand in case of an emergency and be able to communicate with you effectively and efficiently. We ask that you fill it out on the spot. You can hand it into our front desk and we'll keep it in a safe place. So that's my announcement from Communications. If you have any further questions, let me know, and we'll have a table set up in the lobby with these forms for you to have available. Thank you.
And can we just take a minute and thank Hidab, Omar, Kristen, the staff. They've been working around the clock for the last 2-3 weeks on this issue, and I believe that they've been doing this heroically. So I think we should all give them a thank you. Extra du'as are always welcomed, and really the great work that they've done. So one of the questions is, why is this guy out on bail? So I've asked somebody who's actually an expert. She's a county prosecutor, works for the district attorney, Summer Hattoud, not to put the blame on her, but to kind of explain how does this happen that somebody is out on the street, even though he was arrested and is charged with such a serious crime.
Assalamu alaikum. I've been a prosecutor in LA County now for 22 years. Now, suspect gets arraigned. What is an arraignment? Suspect shows up in court with a lawyer or gets a lawyer from the public defender's office. In 99.9% of the cases, they will say not guilty. Okay? And the timing of the arraignment depends on if the individual is in custody or out of custody at the time. Mr. Fagan posted bond. His arraignment will be November 10th at the downtown courthouse. After the arraignment, and he says not guilty, the next step in the criminal proceeding is what is called a preliminary hearing. And that is a probable cause hearing before a judge, where the prosecution has to present sufficient evidence to prove that the suspect, in this case Mr. Fagan, committed the crime that he is charged with. It's generally a 20 to 30 minute hearing just before a judge. Prosecution has to call witnesses. After the preliminary hearing, assuming the prosecution has proven its case, the defendant is what is called held to answer. That means the case will move forward through the criminal justice system. 2 weeks after the preliminary hearing, the defendant is arraigned again. And that is on the final formalized charges, because maybe at the preliminary hearing you found that you can charge more counts, or you found that you can't actually meet the counts you did charge. But the second arraignment after the preliminary hearing is when the charges should be finalized. At that arraignment, again, almost always not guilty. And then you have a series of pretrial hearings that can go on anywhere from 2 months to a year, depending on the case. And then finally, a trial, which is generally in front of a jury of 12 people from the community, or it could be, if both sides agree, by a judge sitting alone. In this case, I expect it would be in front of a jury. That's generally a defendant's best chance to give their explanations to 12 lay members of the community who have to unanimously agree. Okay, assuming a guilty after trial, then a few weeks later, there is a sentencing hearing, and then the judge pronounces sentence. That is, in brief, the life of a felony case in Los Angeles County. Now, how does our bail system work? In Los Angeles County, and in every county in California, there is a bail schedule. Felonies have a bail schedule, misdemeanors have a bail schedule, and infractions have a bail schedule. Every crime has a set bail amount, and that is by law, and it's extremely difficult to deviate from that amount. So here, as Omar told you, Mr. Fagan was charged with criminal threats, $50,000, hate crime allegation, $25,000, threatening phone calls, $2,500, because that last charge is a misdemeanor. Total bail is $77,500. Most bail companies will take 10%, some will take nothing if you can make monthly payments. Different bail companies operate in different ways. We've heard a lot about the guns and the ammunition that were found at his home. This is a wake-up call to anyone who thinks we don't need gun control in this country. All of that, legal, because he does not have a felony record, he has not been diagnosed mentally ill, he owns all that stuff legally. So this is a wake-up call for gun control. If he is convicted of a felony at some point in the future, he will not be allowed to own any more weapons. Felons can't have weapons in this state. But until he's a felon, it is legal for him to own weapons. Currently, those weapons are with LAPD. God willing, they will stay with LAPD because we will have a felony conviction. He cannot currently go out and purchase guns legally because there is a restraining order against him. And that is in a database that any gun store has to go through to legally sell a firearm. So hopefully, if he tries to buy a gun, he tries to do it the legal way and he is stopped. But that is where the criminal case is, and that's why the guns were not charged. I do know there's an ongoing investigation into some of the large capacity magazines and that sort of thing, but at least you have a general overview of what has occurred in this case. Salam, am I allowed to take questions?
Yeah.
I see 2 hands.
Yeah, we're running over, but so let's just take them
Okay, this
all at
gentleman was
once.
first, then this woman.
Had a question, gun shows,
Yes.
they still have a loophole.
Oh, yes,
correct?
they sure do.
Okay.
Gun shows have a loophole. He can go to Arizona or Nevada or many other states or go online. This is why the takeaway from this, rather than being upset about the bail, because I know a lot of people are, there's a lot of talk on my Facebook feed, which caused me to put out a post explaining the bail situation. All of that anger should turn into work for gun control. Yes.
So after he bailed out, he made another threat, which was very risky. And why was he not arrested?
I'm
then?
not aware of another threat after making bail.
That's what you said, that after he bailed out, he made another threat.
He did not make another threat. He took an action that caused us more concern, but
So-
it was not a threat.
And that concern didn't lead to an arrest?
He did not do anything that was illegal.
There was nothing criminal about what he did.
Yeah.
But now there is a restraining order, so if anyone sees him, I know his picture's at that front desk. If any of you see him, and I forgot to ask the distance on the restraining order.
1,000 yards.
1,000 yards?
1,000
Okay,
yards.
so if anyone sees
10
him within
football fields.
1,000 yards of here, and that's pretty far, alert our security guards, who will in turn call the police, and then he can get arrested.
Okay, last question.
Yes, please. Assalamu alaikum. You said that because they found a lot of guns in his house.
Yes.
And I thought somebody is you're not supposed to have just one gun.
No,
so
no.
you can have as many guns as you
Under
want
the
as long
current-
as it's legal.
Under the current law in California, you can own all the guns you want as long as they are legal weapons. That's why we need gun
There's
control laws.
And there's a proposition about gun control we're going to cover.
Yes.
That's a commercial for the next
Stay
segment.
for the election
Part
forum, it's
part
next.
of the program.
Last-
Last question. Last question,
What about
please.
the arraignment?
after the arraignment, can we have another bail bond hearing with the judge in order to make sure it's not out?
Only if the law says we can revisit bail if there are changed circumstances. And bear in mind, everyone, the current political climate in California, and you'll have this in the election form, is to get people out of jails. Okay, that's the current political climate we have in California. We don't want to lock up people. You've got Prop 57 on the ballot. We don't want to lock up anyone anymore. We want rehabilitation and stuff, but the law says if there are changed circumstances.
If I may say, two things are important in the bail bond hearing. Am I right? It's the flight risk and the threat to the community. How about the second aspect, the threat to the community?
The threat to the community is already in the crime that is charged. The crime is criminal threats.
And a hate crime.
And a hate crime.
Which
So
means
those
he's-
have been
yeah.
addressed in the bail
Right.
already with the charges that are charged.
So, one other thing, first of all, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Very, very informative. And you actually alleviated many of my anxieties. It takes a lot for me to get anxious, but thank you. And so another thing that we did is we got a call, emails from our Congressman Javier Becerra, who, by the way, we had a gun control interfaith panel upstairs here a couple months ago. So the Congressman is a stakeholder of this mosque, and his staff emailed us asking what can the Congressman do to help. So the Congressman has been in touch with the Department of Justice to kick this up to become a federal issue, a federal prosecution. And so his deputy here, Jimenez, is here to say a few words on behalf of the Congressman. So please welcome Gemma.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just here on behalf of the Congressman to read a statement. When we found out through the media what had happened to the center, we wanted to reach out to Hadab and to Salam, who's been a great partner and asset to our office for many years. So this is a statement from the Congressman. Dear family and friends of the Islamic Center of Southern California, the Islamic Center of Southern California has been an important part of our community for over 60 years. It is not only a place of worship, but a place for our community to convene. The center has been a shining example of tolerance and inclusion by opening its doors to people, of all faiths and backgrounds. When I learned about the recent threats to the center, it reminded me that not all parties in this nation embrace the same values of the center. The alarming increase in the intolerable anti-Muslim rhetoric over the last few months is dangerous and disturbing. As a community, we need to stand together, not be intimidated, and be reminded that we all share this in common. We are all Americans and share the love for this country. Please consider me and my office a friend and an ally. I stand with you. If there's anything we can do, please do not hesitate to ask. Sincerely, Congressman Becerra.
Thank you so much, and it's heartfelt. We really do appreciate everything you've done, Emma, and we also want you to relay our deep appreciation. I think we'll put the letter on our website and send it to the community, the letter, which was excellently written and read. So thank you so much. Yes?
I just want to make two just announcements. One, we've had parents reaching out about whether or not Sunday school will be continuing. If you're not on the email list, please talk to Ms. Haddad. We send out emails regularly for parents who, for now it's business as usual, but make sure you're on the email list. Second of all, as traumatizing as this is to us as adults, it's equally, if not more traumatizing to our children. So we as a Sunday school are going to come up with some parenting workshops, emails, and discussions with our students as well, with what's going on that's age and developmentally appropriate, how to address xenophobia, and sort of talk through some of these topics. So
That's an excellent point. Thank you. And I think we will also do some mental health panel, talk about dealing with trauma. I mean, could you imagine, let's say you were 4 or 5 years old at 9/11 for the last 15 years. you've just heard bad things about your religion, about your community. That in and of itself is very traumatic, and I don't think we've really addressed that effectively. So we're going to have a panel on dealing with that and provide as much counseling as possible to our own community and to our young people. So I'm sorry we're out of time. We're going to go more into questions, but we'd be happy to take those questions privately online. We do have to move on to the next half of the program, which is about the elections. And the elections, I just want to make a few general points about this upcoming elections. First of all, for the presidential elections and the federal elections, everybody focuses on the presidency. And we at NPAC always follow that, but we also want to be a little bit cautious about it. The issue is not so much of a horse race, even though that's how it's being presented, like who's going to win, who should we support. Even when you support somebody, that person, that candidate isn't always 100% aligned, and people get disappointed with some of the issues. So our point is, with the election and the electoral process in general, the work for us does not end on November 8th. The work begins on November 8th. Our work with the next administration, the next 4 years, on their national security issues, on their foreign policy, on civil rights, on healthcare and education, all those will be important for us to remain engaged with the next administration. Now, if it happens that Trump wins and he becomes president, we do have to come up with a strategy on dealing with a Trump presidency. So we're working tirelessly to come up with a strategy to deal with that scenario. And even if he does not win, I don't think that Trump is the one who gets the credit, if you will, for all this commotion that's going on with the nation. It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon of nationalism that is running rampant in our country. And we have to address this problem of nationalism. And we have to also engage those across the aisle, across religion, across race, to talk as Americans about this issue. Now, other people will get riled up, and we're going to get all compartmentalized into our various religious and racial corners, if you will. That will not help our country. How do we break that separation? How do we break that cycle of vitriol and engage the other, as the Quran says, repel evil with good, so that the one with whom there is enmity becomes as if he is your closest and warmest friend. And that's the strategy we have to put in place for the next foreseeable future, because as I said, and there's an estimate that Trump represents 100 million people who are his base. That's a third of the country. So if a third of the country is feeling this kind of despair, if you will, fear, anxiety, and lashing out at any and all minority groups, then that has to be addressed in terms of at the core, not just the symptoms, but the core of the issues, and that's what we have to deal with beyond that. Now, what we're going to do is cover for the next 15-20 minutes the state and city propositions. So does everyone have a copy of that? If you don't, raise your hand and we'll pass out copies. And then I'm going to ask Ryan and Asad. Where's Asad? There you go. Come on up. Ryan Ahari is our policy fellow, and he's going to cover some, not all, of the state propositions. How many are there this year? About 20? 17? There are 17 state propositions, and if you got the booklet from the Secretary of State, it's about this thick. And that means that our state legislature is not doing its job, because they're the ones that really should be passing these laws or making decisions. They're passing it down to us. But we have people that have analyzed this issue, and we've compared it. There's a CARE set of recommendations. There's their League of Women Voters and the LA Times. They've all done great analyses. We've done our own analyses, and Ryan Ahari, our policy fellow, is going to cover maybe 5 or 6 of them for you. And then we'll take questions on others that you may have. But the full analysis and recommendations are in the handout that you can get and follow, if you will, for the election process. So first, Ryan. Then Asad, who has worked for city councilman in the city, and he worked for a state senator or a state assembly?
2 city council.
But not a state?
No.
Not a state. Okay, so 2 city councilmen. He's going to cover some of the city propositions that are with us. Oh, I want to also acknowledge, just notice, Rabbi Jonathan Klein from Clergy Laity United for Economic Justice, CLUE. He's with us. Thank you, Jonathan, for being here with us today. Thank you. And did I see someone else? Who else?
Susan Goldberg was here, Rabbi Susan Goldberg, but she stepped out.
Oh, she stepped out. Well, thank her on my behalf for being with us. So Ryan's going to cover the state propositions, and then Asad's going to cover a few of the city propositions. And not all of you are going to will have the city propositions, only those who live in the city of LA. If the city of LA goes all the way down to, I think, Torrance, and then goes to the Valley, and East Los Angeles. But if you live in Glendale, if you live in most of the South Bay, Santa Monica, that's not the city of LA. That will be a county. You may have state, county, and your own city initiatives. Okay? But he's going to cover the city of LA. So let's listen to them for a few minutes, and then we'll take some questions.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Ryan Ahari. I'm MPAC's Research and Policy Fellow. So I want to go over some of the most important pressing issues that are facing that we're facing in this election cycle. There are 17 initiatives, which is a lot, but I want to go over several of them. So for starters, Proposition 55, it's going to divert taxes to schools and Medi-Cal, which is California's insurance system. So in 2012, Proposition 30 was passed by the voters. It increased the state sales tax and it increased state income tax for high-income earners. It started with a bracket, so at $250,000 and $100,000 for joint for couples that file jointly. It started that way, and then as your income increased, so did the percentage increase on your income. So that money was put in an educational fund within the general fund, which is California's state budget. And so for the next 12 years, if this is passed, the next 12 years, the tax will be extended up to $4 billion at the lowest estimates will be given towards schools. That includes K through 12 and community colleges. And then in good years, up to $9 billion. And it really fluctuates because it depends on people's income, and that's really unstable. And so up to $2 billion will also be given to Medi-Cal per year. The way that works is whatever excess money there is that is given to schools, up to 50% of that will be given to Medi-Cal. So that's how so either it can be $0 per year or $2 billion per year, and that's determined by the governor's office. So the next two propositions are confused.
At the end of each one, and so we recommend.
And so MPAC officially, we are yes on Prop 55. So for Prop 62, this is kind of like there's two of them. So Prop 62 and Prop 66, they are covering the same thing. And the way it works is when there are two propositions or more or whatever that are on the ballot and they're addressing the same thing, the proposition that passes with more votes is the one that actually goes into effect. So that's really important to keep in mind. Not only does your proposition need to pass, because if they both pass, that's great, but if one gets fewer votes, that's the one that does not go into law. The one with more votes goes into law. So Prop 62 will actually repeal the death penalty for California officially. It will abolish the death penalty. It will replace the death penalty with life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Current death row inmates will be taken off of death row and put into prison, in life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The state will save about $150 million a year, and that's because of court costs. And the wages of inmates who are in prison, their wages will go towards victim restitution, which is their wages will go towards the victim's family whose life they took. So 62, make it very clear, that will repeal the death penalty. And 66 is very different. Prop 66 is going to speed up the death penalty, which is funny because both propositions had enough signatures to become a proposition. So Prop 66, speeding up the death penalty. So what it'll do is, right now, you can be on death row for 20, 30 years. That's how long the appeals process is. But under Prop 66 for California, the appeals process will be reduced to 5 years. So that's significantly less. So for capital cases, it'll be up to 5 years. 70% of death row inmate wages. So when a death row inmate is earning income in prison, 70% of those wages will go towards victim restitution, that is, the families of the victims. And the estimated savings for Prop 66 is tens of millions of dollars, again, relating to court cases. So for Prop 62, I forgot to mention, Prop 62, MPAC supports Prop 62. MPAC does not support Prop 66. And so for the next two, also very similar, Prop 65 is the carry-out bag environmental fee. The city of LA banned plastic bags in 2014, and they switched from single-use plastic bags to multiple use. And the idea is we want to reduce pollution, litter, and waste in our environment, as well as protect animals in the ocean. Turtles were found suffocating plastic bags, and it had actually killed them, and it blocked the blowholes of whales in the ocean. So under Prop 65, the state will redirect the 10-cent fee you pay per bag at grocery stores and retailers. That 10-cent fee, depending on how many bags you get that the retailer will charge you, it'll go into an environmental fund dedicated to reducing pollution, reducing litter, reducing waste. And a board will be developing regulations on how to develop the implementation of the proposition. MPAC's position on this is neutral. So decide that proposition on yourself, please. And then for Prop 67, again, plastic bag. This will actually effectively ban plastic bags across the state. So grocery stores and certain retailers are going to not be allowed to sell single-use plastic bags. They can sell the thicker ones. I don't know if you've seen them at Ralph's or Target. Those ones are not single-use, so you can still sell those. You can still give those to customers, but you cannot give the single-use ones. Those are the thinner ones that cause more damage. So reusable and recycled bags will be permitted to sell at 10 cents each, and the costs for this proposition will be about $1 million in state administrative costs, and there will be minor savings from reduced waste and reduced litter. So MPAC is in support of Prop 67. Again, Prop 65 and 67 are addressing the same thing, so do not confuse those two issues. A couple propositions left. Prop 63, really important, one of the hottest propositions on this year's ballot. 63 is the firearms regulation. It was brought forward by Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, who's running for governor in 2018, and the Safety for All campaign. So it does a lot. Large capacity magazines will be prohibited, and if you own large capacity magazines, you're actually going to have to formally dispose of them. And that's defined within the proposition, how to actually dispose of that legally. Lost and stolen firearms and ammunitions have to be reported to law enforcement as soon as possible. People convicted of stealing a gun are prohibited from possessing any firearms, so that's really important. Individuals must pass background checks, and this is on the Department of Justice's side, and they have to obtain a Department of Justice permission to buy ammunition. The costs of Prop 63 are potentially in the millions related to law enforcement and court procedures. MPAC supports 63, so if you'd like to see more gun control, vote for 63. If you don't, then vote no. And finally, Prop 57, it is going to re-sentence current inmates serving non-violent, who are found guilty of non-violent crimes. So under Prop 57, it's going to allow parole considerations for non-violent felons, but they have to serve their minimum sentence first. So as soon as they meet that minimum requirement, they will be up for parole under this. And non-violent crimes could be anything from financial crimes to possession of marijuana, things that are non-violent, not violent inmates. The Department of Commerce will develop regulations on how to implement the new parole system. The savings are estimated to be in the tens of millions of dollars, and the Department of Correction is authorized to define what is good behavior, what can be assigned as credit, educational achievements, and rehab and things like that. So for Prop 57, MPAC is, y'all probably know before I do. Yes? Okay, yes. So does anybody have any questions?
Why are we neutral on Prop 64?
I think we're leaning yes, right?
Huh?
We're leaning yes?
Our official position is neutral.
That's me why.
Why? Well,
I know you're going to say for medicinal purposes, but most people are taking advantage of that.
so for Prop 64, I think the perspective was a lot of the community sees it as something that's haram. And a lot of people might not agree with the legalization of it. So I think Islamically and religiously, depending on people's perspectives, we didn't say no, we didn't say yes, but we were thinking of what the community thinks. And so I've heard things that are really 50-50, so it depends what you're talking to. But for our position, we do lean yes, but we go neutral. I mean, personally, I do support it. So yeah.
So it should be a yes.
Well,
It's up to you.
To my
It's up to you,
Just,
yeah.
A lot, like I said, a lot of these issues, really the state handles it, but especially when you're dealing with religious communities, we have moral issues, obviously, with any kind of mind-altering substance, alcohol, or marijuana, or any other drug. But, you know, there's so many ways to look at it, so we just ask you to be informed and vote your conscience.
Yes.
With Prop 65 and 67, you're a yes, you are a neutral on one and a yes on the other?
Yes.
And that too is a little confusing, mostly because on 65, why is it that you're neutral, especially when it says that these are sponsored by out-of-state plastic companies from South Carolina and Texas who don't care about the California environment? You talked about how this money is going to go to the environment projects, but the con side says that it's really not. It's all about plastic industry, selling the plastic. So you're neutral on that.
The reason behind that was because there are pros to that 10-cent environmental fee. So 10 cents per bag would be given to an environmental program, and that program would develop new ways to clean our water and reduce litter and reduce pollution. So that's the upside. The upside is it'll be more efforts towards protecting the environment. The bad side is that it's effectively a tax, 10 cents per person for each retail store or grocery store. So we saw the pros and cons. Yes, there's some interesting characters behind the pro side, but really it's up to the voter how they want to vote. But the idea is it might not be great, but it also does have a positive environmental impact. So we were torn between that.
Does Clue have any position on that?
Yeah, and I will say that we looked at a number of groups, including in the Muslim community. We had CARE's endorsement position. I can't remember what their position was, but our position is that there was an outright ban with 67, and 65 was really an effort to undo that ban. So we have a no, because we're opposed to Prop 65.
Okay. And then which one were you just talking about?
65.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We're running out of time and running out of people. So let's go to the city propositions for many of you who live in the city already.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Asad Bey. Just going to go over something briefly regarding the county and the city. In the county, there are two measures. Measure A, which is a tax which would increase funding for our parks, beaches, and harbors. In 1996, there was a proposition which provided a steady revenue stream to maintain our parks and beaches. It is now expiring, and so the County Board of Supervisors highly recommend that we vote yes on Measure A. They have a needs assessment, so you actually have the parks and facilities that will be maintained. They are targeting the highest need, so we are going to communities that have been historically defunded revenue streams for parks. It's all online. The second one is Measure M. As you all know, it's a very controversial plan. It is the county's new transportation sort of index, which they're going to apply over the course of 40 years. It would essentially raise $120 billion to really refurbish the county's transportation systems. Everything from connecting the Valley to LAX, everything connecting North Hollywood to Pasadena. It is also on the ballot. They are both essentially taxes. One is a property tax, one is a sales tax. And so there are sites online, I can forward to Salam, and you can see where in the community both those measures will impact. The thing where I will emphasize with Measure M is local returns. Not only are we building trains, not only are we building tracks, but local returns essentially means that we're going to provide funding to maintain our parks, to maintain our streets. And so it really goes into effect, it really impacts, every part of our community. And then I'm going to, I guess, wrap it up by saying the LA City homeless services. The city has a bond measure. It's going to raise about $1.2 billion to provide housing and services for the homeless in our communities. They have identified facilities throughout the valley, throughout the central city, throughout the Venice Beach area to provide funding. Obviously, this is receiving a lot of fodder when it comes to the political and legislative aspects, but I highly suggest that you look into the measure, Measure HHH, and identify whether you support it or not. I know we're going to get ready to play Zohar soon, but thank you for your time. That's basically it. Can I say one thing on Prop 55, just something I'm passionate about? If you really parse out the dollar amount, with 55 it raises $4 to $9 billion. LAUSD gets about $800 million from Prop 30. That's about almost 20% of its budget. And so, if it doesn't go through, it would be devastating to the entire district with 640,000 students, 85% being low income or foster youth or English learners. It's something we should probably emphasize to all parents, all students, all voters. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.